Hi, this is Robert with goldsilverpros.com and Seeking Alpha, and I'm here discussing Nordic Gold with the CEO, Michael Hepworth. Michael, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining. I do appreciate it. So I know that you have a project out in Finland. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about it and what your accomplishments have been so far in 2018.
Okay, good. Well, we have a fully built past producer that should produce about 70,000 ounces a year once we get up to full speed. It's 100% owned, and we did our first pour in November, end of November 2018, and that was 1,234 ounces of 90% doré. Since that time, we've poured a fair bit more. We've produced about $6 million worth of gold, and Finland's a great place to work. It's the #1 mining jurisdiction. There are obviously a few challenges getting started again, but I think we've had a very successful run with this mine. I mean, we acquired it or financed the mine in December 2017. We had a PEA produced by June 2018. We started mining in August 2018, and that was more, cleaning up the site and beginning to stockpile some ore and that kind of thing. But actual mining did start in August. Then we had an analyst tour of the GTK Mining Finland put on a tour, and there were a half a dozen analysts and mining writers that came to the mine, so we got some good coverage from that. So we had that analyst tour in August. As I said, we had the first pour in November, and we are expecting to get to commercial production shortly. So that's really the history of it. Things have moved pretty quickly. I think 11 months to go from financing to production is going some, and we needed to get to cash flow because we had enough money to get us to production, but we didn't have enough money to actually get us beyond production. So cash flow is a pretty critical milestone for us.
Okay, and this was a past producing mine that another company owned, so you have acquired that, and I think that's giving you some advantages in not having to build the mine out, as well as giving you some advantages with tax credit. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, the tax credit is about $155 million. So we've got that tax loss carry forward, which is a huge opportunity for us. And the previous company spent 220 million euros building this mine. So all the infrastructure's in place. We really had to do very little in the way of capital improvements. There were some odd things, pumps and pipes, and we had to rebuild the agitator blades in the CIL system and that kind of thing. But most of the major capital was already in place and in pretty good shape because it only ran for 2 years. And as a result, there wasn't a huge amount of wear, although unfortunately we discovered once we started operating the mine that a lot of the preventative maintenance that should have been done while the mine was being built and operated by the previous owners wasn't done. So we had a few little surprises that slowed us down, but I think we're past that on the mill now.
Okay. And so what does your production schedule look like? I know you'll reach commercial production this year, it looks like, and how many ounces of gold are you guys going to produce, and what is your mine life?
We're looking to produce around 70,000 ounces a year, and the mine life, if we don't discover any more gold, is 6 years. But the interesting thing is we have a large area that we're calling the Gold Corridor. It's about 5.3 kilometers long with almost identical geology to the mine area. And we've only drilled 1.2 kilometers of this. This is where the two pits are. So the resource is really only constrained by the drilling. And assuming that we can produce some decent profits and have some money aside, we can actually. I'm hoping that we can actually get to doing some extensive drilling this year. And the two objectives. One is to prove up more ounces in the resource that we currently have, and moving gold from indicated and inferred to measured and indicated. But I'm also optimistic that there's probably more gold to be discovered, simply because the geology is very, very similar, and we've done a fairly extensive amount of not we haven't been drilling, but we've done some geophysics, we've done mag, we've done some mapping and this kind of thing, and so we've identified some potential structures where we think there's high probability of discovering more gold.
Okay. Do you have a timeline for when you may do some additional exploration?
Well, I think a lot is going to depend on our cash flow and how quickly we get to commercial production. If we can get to commercial production in the first quarter, then I think that augurs well for it. If it takes longer for us to get to commercial production, and there are always teething problems, so it's early days to predict. We haven't given any forward guidance as yet on what we think we'll be able to do and when, and we should probably have to do something. I would think by the end of the first quarter we'll be in a position to put something out and let the market know exactly what we're doing.
Okay. In terms of the land package that you were mentioning, you have quite a bit of space and quite a bit that's not been explored. Can you give some information on the overall size?
Yeah, we have 27 square kilometers that are permitted for exploration and for mining. The pits cover about just under 1,700 hectares. Now the pits are interesting because they're open at depth and they're open along strike. So we're optimistic that there is more gold right in that area. We've also found some higher grade areas close by. There's an area that they're calling New Hope, which is a small area. It's more of a pit extension than anything else, but it's looking very, very promising. So we have a large area. In addition to the pits, there are two properties that are contiguous with the area that is permitted for mining. One is called Musaneva and the other one is Kaukainen. And there's been bedrock sampling that has been done there previously, and there are two holes in there, each of which have hit gold. So it looks very, very promising that there is more gold there, but until we actually put the drills in, we're not sure that we can really say too much more about it than what I've said. There is a third property that is about 12 kilometers to the south, which also has very similar geology and some bedrock sampling done, which looks promising. But we see that as a sort of a later opportunity because these other properties are so close by. They're probably only 5 kilometers from the mill, so that they would be the obvious place to look.
Okay, makes sense. And I know that Finland is known as a safe mining location and generally supportive of property rights, much like the United States and Canada are.
Yep.
Are there other companies in the area that are also doing mining or are there other projects going next to you?
There are other projects. There's nothing that's actually very close to us. Belvedere Resources used to have a property that's about 150 kilometers away. It's been taken over by a Finnish company, and then there are all sorts of other projects around, but not terribly close. There's companies like Firefox and people like that, and then of course Agnico Eagle is a fair distance from us, but they have I think their Kittilä mine is the largest gold mine in Europe.
Oh wow! I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah. They're about 500 kilometers north of us, so it's a fair distance. But Finland's got some pretty interesting opportunities. There are quite a few companies that are operating there. Nobody nobody else is mining as yet. It's just Agnico Eagle and ourselves. Although there are other mines as such. There's phosphate mining, and there's lithium mining, and there's silver mining, and there's nickel mining, and that kind of stuff. But ours are the only two gold mines.
Okay. And is it primarily gold? Do you have other byproducts as well?
There's silver there, but it's relatively small. So I mentioned when we poured the initial pour that it was 90% doré. Of that, it was probably 8% silver, and the rest would have been copper and whatever else is in there. So there's the copper is probably not of any sort of commercial interest. What's interesting though, in terms of commercial interest, is we've been using cobalt as an indicator mineral. And the cobalt reports to the high-grade tailings area, and there is cobalt there, and it's mined and milled. The only thing is, with the current price of cobalt at 38,000 a ton, it's probably not economical. But if that goes back to 65,000 a ton, as it was earlier on in the year, there's a possibility that cobalt may be commercially viable as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so for the battery manufacturers, cobalt's definitely a big input. So, yeah. So looking at your PEA, and it looks like at a $1,300 gold price, which is where we are today. Thankfully, the gold price has started moving back up again. It looks like you guys have some pretty solid financials.
Yeah, the financials look very solid. The big challenge will be making sure that we don't fall prey to the problems that the previous operators did, which was tons and grade. They didn't produce the kind of grade that their economic assessment actually said they could, and it's actually quite challenging because there's a lot of dilution that takes place because the veins are actually quite small. They're very high grade. They're probably 30 to 60 grams themselves, but they're only centimeters wide, and the intervening rock is all waste, and these are vein swarms that pinch and swell. So it is a challenging operation to mine, but we think we've worked out what needs to be done, and we're working diligently to make sure that we produce both the tons and the grade.
Okay. And in terms of your the internal rate of return, I think you have here 44.6% and a payback of 1.7 years. I know companies may not always want to get too forward-looking, but as the price of gold rises, how does that affect your profitability? Say if we got back to like a $1,350 or $1,400 range, would that substantially affect the amount of profits that you guys get?
It makes a very significant difference because, the actual cost of mining doesn't actually increase. So pretty much everything falls to the bottom line.
Okay. Are there any, in the district that you guys are in, are there any concerns over regulatory bodies? I know sometimes non-governmental entities will also get involved in projects. I couldn't find any information on that. It seemed like that wouldn't be any sort of issue for you guys at all.
Look, I think there's always people that are looking, to make sure that you don't transgress in any way. The previous owners were not very diligent with some of the environmental stuff. We've developed a very good working relationship with the regulators, and they've been very, very supportive. They've helped us along the way. I mean, we've obviously got to do what they want, and we've done that, and they've been very, very helpful. The town itself, which is about 25 kilometers away, we've got a very, very supportive mayor and city council. The area itself is a little depressed, so I think they're very happy to have us there because obviously there are taxes and there are jobs. We currently employ close to 200 people right now. So, there are a lot of reasons for people to be supportive, but one can never be complacent about these things. You've got to be on top of things. You've got to make sure that all your environmental stuff is is taken care of, and that you deal with issues when they arise.
Okay.
But we're trying to be responsible citizens.
No, yeah, definitely understood, and good to hear that, and good to hear that the town is supportive. I know when I was visiting Mexico for another project I was covering last year, a lot of the townspeople had been in the mining business for a long time, and it really had been passed down from family to family. And so I know mining can be a big part of the economy of town, especially not the larger cities when the mines are developed, and it can be a very positive thing for the local economy in a lot of cases.
Yep, absolutely.
Could you take just a moment and talk about the team that you put together? It seems like you have a team that has a lot of impressive credentials in terms of their mining experience and their geological experience. If you would just take a moment.
Yeah, we have, first of all, Joe Ranford, who is our general manager. He's an Australian mining engineer, probably 25 years of gold production experience. He's also the company chief operating officer, and he's really been the sort of driving force behind getting the mine back into production. We also have Scott Salisbury, who is a mechanical engineer who runs the plant, and he again has a lot of very extensive gold mining experience and production experience. And then we have a pretty solid geological team at the mine. Some of the people have been at the mine since the beginning. They understand the geology really well. We've got a mining team again with a lot of gold mining experience. So all in all, I think we're well rounded in terms of the team that we've got, and actually lucky to have put together the people that we have.
Yeah.
And the other thing, by the way, is all these people are actually living in Finland. Most of the people on the senior people on the team have actually moved their families to Finland and are committed to the country.
Oh, wow. That's nice. Okay.
Yeah. So they're not on rotation.
Sure. So in terms of ownership of the stock and the capital structure, could you talk a little bit about that and how much of your stock is owned by insiders for the company?
Well, I'll answer the last question first. It's probably 5 to 6% that's owned by insiders. The largest, there are two big blocks of shares. One is Nordic Mines, who were the people that actually owned the company. They hold 58 million shares. Those shares are to be dividended out to their shareholders. The only reason they haven't been dividended out is that there is a tax problem that they're dealing with, and they don't know whether they will have to sell shares to settle the tax problem or whether they can make the tax problem go away. At the moment, they're not able to sell shares, nor are they able to vote them. That was done when we actually acquired the other 40% of the company, because obviously we didn't want a block of 40% out there. So although there is this big single block of 58 million shares, they are not votable or tradable at the moment, but that will probably change, but they won't be voted as a block at any time. And then Pandion, who were the people who did the gold forward sale with us, own 19.9% of the company. And I could probably get to 65 to 70% of the shareholders with about maybe 5 or 6 phone calls. So it's pretty tightly held. It's one of the problems that we're having, because there isn't much liquidity.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that for a moment. You guys trade on I believe, the Toronto Stock Exchange, and then for investors in the States, you're on the over-the-counter markets. And how has that trading been for you guys?
It's unfortunately, as I say, not a terribly liquid stock. We tend to trade sort of small amounts. I mean, 150,000 shares is actually a good day for us, and we would hope to actually be well north of that. Unfortunately, that just hasn't happened, and as a result, we are pretty thinly traded, and I'm hoping that as these other shares come into the market, we should we should be able to increase the liquidity, because I think our average volumes are around 60 to 70,000 a day, which is a very, very low amount for a company with a share structure like we've got.
Yeah. And in terms of your valuation, how are you guys valued compared to the project? Do you think that you're undervalued or valued appropriately?
My sense is that we're undervalued. I mean, the market cap of this company is about $20 million. And I think that's probably the best way to look at it. If you look at what we've got a plant that is potentially worth $70 million. We are a producing gold mine. We have, potential cash flow of about $30 million a year. We have actually probably not quite as much as that, but over the life of the mine, it's $130 to $140 million cash flow. We've got $155 million tax loss. So there are a lot of things that all added up, and then there's the gold in the ground as well. So sure. We're virtually getting no credit for anything. And if you look at the value of the gold in the ground, we're getting no credit for anything else. So my sense is that we're undervalued.
Yeah, there was some research done recently by Haywood for another gold company that I had covered quite a bit in 2018, and their research indicated that pretty much the entire gold and silver sector is undervalued to the project value, even to the gold in the ground for companies, irrespective of what other plant and equipment and tax credits that they may have. And some of the research was interesting because I think it pointed to the probability that the valuations could correct if there's more interest in the gold and silver market. And I know that interest in gold and silver tends to be very cyclical. I think as the gold price rises, there will be more interest coming into the market. And I'm hoping that the valuations of a lot of companies will correct, because I do see a lot of depressed valuations. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for investors there that are looking for good value investments. Your company, I think, would definitely be one of them, because I agree with you. I do think you're undervalued according to the information that I have for you. So I think one of the really good prospects for investors is to look at some of these companies like yours who are now in operation. I mean, you're not exploring right now, you're actually in operation. Yeah. You do have feasibility studies and economic analysis done. That information is there. And if you're looking for a way to get into gold and silver relatively inexpensively with a lot of upside, I think your company is probably one of those that would be a very good option.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, Rick Rule has a saying which whenever I think of investing in the sector, I always believe it's the right one. You're either a contrarian or you're a victim. And I think you have to be a contrarian to take advantage of the low prices, because if you wait until the prices begin to move up, you actually become a victim, because you've probably lost some opportunity there. But these are always challenging things to get people comfortable to actually part with money when the market's doing nothing.
Yeah, and I think that's where we are in my studies. In addition to covering the resource sector over the years, I've covered quite a bit economic cycles. And so a lot of what I write about is macroeconomics and economic cycles. And I think that we're at the end of the current regular bull market in terms of the general stock and bond market. I think we've ended the 30-year U.S. bond bull market. It's pretty clear by the interest rates. And the stock market seemed to want to go into correction. And I think there's a lot of debt that needs to be cleaned out for most American companies. So from my viewpoint, I think that we're probably at a point in which the cycle is just starting for the gold and silver sector. I think the price of gold and silver are going to go up, and that's what I've been concentrating on pretty much for 2018. And so I think, if people want to get invested, now would be the time to do so. I don't think it's going to be much longer before a lot more interest comes into the gold and silver sector. And the gold and silver sector is by far not the largest sector in the market. So it doesn't take a lot of money really coming into that sector to really provide the boost that I think these companies are going to need to.
Well, I certainly hope you're right, and certainly my investment patterns right now are based on similar views. So we can only hope.
We can. Michael, is there anything else that you wanted to address with investors today? Any points that we have not covered so far in the interview?
I don't think so. I mean, I think there are really only two or three things here that the mine is fully built. It is producing. There is a significant upside, and we just need, I think, a good gold market to put the wings underneath this thing.
Yeah, I agree. Michael, thank you so much for your time today. I do appreciate the time that you provided, and look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
This has been a Gold Silver Pros production. Please subscribe to us on YouTube and sign up for our newsletter on goldsilverpros.com.